What is up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones, and AJ, we're here for another episode of the UNC basketball show. Lot to talk about in this episode is Carolina is obviously advancing, or has advanced already, to the Sweet 16, where they will play number 4 seed Alabama on Thursday night in Los Angeles. 9:40-ish p.m. tip-off time, which means the game is, there's no doubt the game's not tipping off till after 10 probably. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to tangent real quick, AJ. You know I don't like late games. I know you don't love late games. It'll be a little bit better you because it's West Coast, so I mean that'll help you out. It won't be that late for you. But man, what is up with these 10 o'clock tips? Can we not do something else? Can we not maybe move a couple games up? Can we maybe not? Whose idea is this? I need to vent to you for a second, AJ, because I can't stand them personally.
TV bean counters who have no idea what a basketball feels like. So Arizona plays the first game in LA, which is 4 o'clock in Tucson.
Make sense.
So yeah, I was reading a tweet where I believe NC State has the second game Friday night. I'm not sure. Friday night, there's a game in Detroit, which is Eastern time right now. There's a game that the second game tips off at 10:15.
Well, State's Thursday game, first round game, I think was like a 9:40 game in Pittsburgh. Like it's ridiculous. So I feel for those guys covering those games. I don't see why, especially the Friday games, why you just can't move them up to like 6. Start at 6. It beats me, man.
People take off work on Thursday and Friday the first weekend. They're going to do that go home a little early for a Sweet 16 game, I would think.
Yeah, but you would think so. I
they want to stagger them. I could see one. And Carolina, Alabama is a bigger draw than Clemson, Arizona. They try to they have 2 sites per night, so they want to have the biggest game at each site at separate start times. They want the 2 main games and the 2 blocks that they have that night. So Carolina is going to be one of them. I don't even know what the other one is for Thursday. I'm in such a Tar Heel cave.
I don't know either.
Other than my rampage about the ACC being vindicated and enjoying Twitter a lot, or X. I still call it Twitter because I'm an old.
It's Twitter. I'm never calling it X. Yeah. I'm never calling it X. I'm just not going to do it.
So I enjoyed that, but I don't even know what the other region is that's Thursday night yet, because I haven't peeled that onion yet. I'm in the transitional phase of putting a bow on Charlotte and building toward LA. Plus, I have one day to get all my stuff done, laundry and haircut and make sure that I got a bunch of crap taken care of. Because if Carolina advances to the Final Four, I'm not coming home. I'm staying out there and I'm driving to Phoenix. So I'm going to be gone 2 weeks. My wife just had major surgery, and I've got to make sure she's got a ton of stuff and taken care of, and she has to go to PT and all that stuff. So there's like a lot of stuff going on. So I do not know the other Thursday games, but the first game is the bigger game at the other site. There's no doubt about that. They want Carolina, Alabama on as prime a spot as they can get, because the intrigue of the game. Carolina has obviously the basketball brand, and Alabama's just got a sports brand. Yeah, Alabama has become. There's Alabama, there's Michigan, there's Texas, there's Carolina, there's UCLA. These are the schools that they resonate no matter what they do now. Alabama's clearly in one of those brackets now. Since this is the month of brackets, I'll call it a bracket.
Yeah, and since you were talking about it, it's Arizona Clemson first game, UConn San Diego State's the 7:39 game, and then North Carolina Alabama is the 9:40 game, even though there's no chance it's tipping off at 9:40. And then it could be worse, I guess. It could be Iowa State and Illinois, which tips off at 10:09 p.m.
Yeah, so they want UConn in that bracket.
Yep.
Okay, and then they want Carolina Alabama in the other one. So that makes sense. Look, it's a TV show.
Oh yeah.
It's a TV show. As much as we want to think it's the purest of competition and all the right intentions are put forward, it's a TV show. That's what it is. They pay $1 billion to televise this TV show. So they don't want UConn and Carolina going up against each other, because the casual fan And NC State had like 5 or 6 million people watch its game against Texas Tech. And that's just that one with all the other stuff going on. The casual observer is going to watch UConn. The casual observer is going to watch Duke. They're going to watch North Carolina because they sell. Mm-hmm. So that's why they're going to be in different spots. And as far as it being a West, it's not going to make any difference to me. I operate on the Eastern time I'm out there in the sense that, to me, yes, it'll be a 6:50 start out there, but I'm thinking 9:50 because that's what the majority of my readership and audience is. So my actual goal, and I'm not kidding you, my actual goal is to have my work done before the sun comes up out there. I'm not kidding.
I know you're not kidding. That's why I'm laughing.
Because if I'm like, hey, it's only 2 a.m., I got time. It's really 5 a.m.
Yeah.
What if Datica gets up to go to work and he wants to read the site and I'm cruising in West Coast time? Datica's like, AJ, where's the takeaways, man? I don't need that crap. I'm cruising on Eastern time.
You don't need that. You don't need to deal with that. Well, yeah, that'll be the goal, is getting. We've already talked about it, but getting our stuff up as fast as we can after that game, because I'll be half asleep doing 3 things. We're gonna bang it out anyway, so we'll make it work for you for you guys. I might be sleepwalking through that one, but I'll have to tape my eyes open during 3 things.
Hey, look, you're a pro, and you have a lot of NCAA tournament experience. A run you had 2 years ago. Remember? Yeah. The UCLA game was the second game after St. Peter's beat Purdue, and I'll never forget. You looked at your watch, and I asked someone sitting near me what time it was when we were doing the 3 things. It was 1:17. Oh yeah, Philly time. Nothing like 1:17 Philly. Nothing. All good things happen at 1:17 a.m. in Philly, right? Nothing bad happens, right?
That's for sure.
And then the national title game in New Orleans. We started the 3 things at 1:30 a.m.
I remember that, yeah, because that was a Monday night, obviously, and I remember that one. Going to work the next day was a bit of a struggle. Good news for me, I am off work on Friday for Good Friday, so that is a positive. Don't have to worry about getting up at the crack of dawn after going to bed at 2 a.m. So I'm more so complaining. You did your complaining last week, AJ. I'm doing my complaining this week because I don't want to say it ruined my week when I saw the tip off time, but it wasn't a great start on Sunday evening to see that.
I will say this. I will say this, and I don't think you'll disagree at all. When it comes to complaining, I'm a 1 seed. I think you're a 3 seed. You're a 3 seed.
Mm-hmm. I could agree with that. I will say that
I complain more than anybody I know.
But I will say, when it comes to game times, I think I'm a 1 seed at complaining, because I'm like it for football.
Yeah, that's true.
I can't stand late games.
You
don't want them.
You are so uber focused, so uber reactionary to all start times for games.
Yeah. Oh, I can't stand it.
Like I dread the ACC email at 11:15 a.m. every Monday during football season to announce the start time 12 days later.
Oh, yeah.
Because if it's not a good time, I know that Mr. Turner's going to fire off an unhappy text.
Yeah, firing on Twitter, firing over text. Just give me, my slogan, AJ. Give me noon games every day of the week, and I'll be the happiest man alive. It's never going to happen. A lot of fans don't want to hear that, but I will say this. Last thing I'll say. I did put a tweet out about the crappy game time for Thursday. A lot of fans agreed with me. Obviously, most Carolina fans on the East Coast anyway. Like, I don't really want to stay up till 2 a.m. watching Carolina, but that's just the way.
Well, and the thing, let me add one more thing to it, just so you can sympathize with myself and the other Carolina media that's going to be out there. If the Tar Heels win, one thing that they do out west, and I was explaining this to somebody in the media the other day who's going to try to fly out Wednesday morning. I'm like, you need to fly out Tuesday. Because even though you're out west, you're operating a lot of the media day stuff, the press conferences, the day before games. All that stuff operates on Eastern time, basically. Mm-hmm. So the press conferences will begin at like 9.
Oh, wow.
Instead of noon. And so you have the late game Thursday night. Well, the next day you have the media stuff with the 2 teams that win. That'll be pushed back a little bit, but you have the huge formal press conference with all 5 starters. The locker room's open for an hour, and then you have the breakout rooms with the 5 starters. So they each have their own little press conference area, and all that stuff happens in accordance with Eastern time, really, because that's the majority of – that's just kind of the clock that they use, and that's where the majority of all audiences are. So – I'll be finishing from Thursday night if Carolina wins at, let's say, 6 a.m. Eastern. It's like 4 hours later, the press conferences start, 5 hours later.
That's a good point. Yeah, that is weird. That is weird that it works like that. I didn't even think about that. That is
it's
bizarre.
They might stagger it here, obviously, and they will for the regional final. It's pushed back a little bit because there's only 2 teams.
Yeah.
But the Wednesday, there's 4 teams there. I don't know if they do the open practices for the Sweet 16 anymore. They didn't 2 years ago in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. But the media could go out and watch for like 20 minutes, and then they sent us back in. They used to do the open practices for the public the day before the Sweet 16 games, and they obviously do Final Four Friday, and they do it the day before your first round NCAA tournament games. But if they do it for the public in LA, they might move it back a little bit just to get more people in there, because they do make money because concessions are open, and I think they charge for parking. So they charge the media for everything nowadays.
Oh, I know.
So anyway, we'll see. We might get a schedule tonight, and I do think I say tonight. It's Monday, obviously, because I leave first thing Tuesday morning. And I talked to Steve Kirshner at Carolina on Saturday in Charlotte, and he wasn't sure yet what Carolina's travel plans were. The thinking was probably Tuesday, but they have to be there Tuesday night anyway because there's practice and there's the media obligations on Wednesday because it's a Thursday game. But there's a very good chance that they leave Monday night as well, just to get acclimated and just get out there. Make Tuesday a normal day, Wednesday a normal day, and then Thursday they're ready to roll. So I don't know yet exactly when they're going. I'll put it on our board. I may tweet it out when I find out, but
okay.
I think Monday makes a lot of sense. It's a quick turnaround, but it's the NCAA tournament. Everything is a sprint right now.
Yeah, 100. And you got to, like you said, got to get acclimated a little bit to the time change. It's not a major time change, but still getting used to that and playing later. I mean, it would make sense for Carolina to.
Well, it's also a jet lag factor.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
because they fly chartered and they'll fly direct. I'm connecting in Phoenix, so I get to land in Phoenix where it looks like the plane is in a pinball machine every time you land in Phoenix. So, and then I'm connecting there and flying to LA. But actually, if Carolina makes the Final Four, I'm driving to Phoenix. I'm running.
That would be pretty cool. You'll probably enjoy that. I know you enjoy.
I've done that once before. After you pass Palm Springs, there's literally nothing. You might get hit with tumbleweed or a giant lizard or something.
Wily coyote out there.
And don't stop to relieve yourself on the side of the road because there are rattlesnakes out there.
Oof, yeah, I believe it, man. I feel like that'd be sweet to do that. It'd be a cool drive. I'd probably do the same thing if I were you too.
You probably haven't, excuse me, you probably haven't seen the movie The Hitcher. C. Thomas Howell, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Rutger Hauer.
Don't think so. I don't think I have.
It's great. Some of the older dudes listening will remember the movie, but I can't help but think driving from Palm Springs to outside of Phoenix that Rutger Hauer could be tailing me somewhere on that road, and that's not a good sign.
Oh, that's great. I'll have to go. I'll have to go figure out.
It's a great movie.
I'll have to go. I'll have to figure out.
You'll never eat fries at a roadside diner the same way ever again after you watch that movie. So there's the teaser for you.
Yeah, I'll have to go do a little my own research after this podcast is in and figure out a little bit more about that reference, because right now it's a little bit over my head. I'm sure, like you said, definitely some people out there who've seen that movie. So if you know what AJ's talking about, like the video below. I'm going to ask for likes about 15 times later in this video, but that's one reason to like this video below among many, many others, of course. But AJ, we'll talk about Alabama in the Sweet 16 in a second, but let's just look back a little bit to this past week, first round and second round games. Carolina coming off wins over Wagner and Michigan State. We obviously talked after the Michigan State game in our Three Things video. If you haven't seen that, go watch that after this one is done. But I mean, I think it was overall, obviously, survive and advance is the name of the game. But I think even when you look at the performances from North Carolina, I think it was a pretty good week for the Tar Heels. Handled Wagner as, you'd expect a 1 seed to handle a 16 seed that has literally 7 players on the bench that could play. I think that game went how everybody expected it to. And then Michigan State, maybe a little bit of a, for me, I remember talking to you about it, and I don't know if I talked about it in Three Things just because we were trying to get it done so quickly with this situation we were in over there. It was a weird game. I had Bryant sitting beside me in the media seat where I was sitting. You were a little bit closer to the court. We were kind of on the concourse. And I remember talking to Bryant during the game and being like, it's kind of one of those games where, one team would play really well, i.e. Michigan State in the opening minutes. They got up to that big 12-point lead. And then they just went brain dead before the half ended, and Carolina picked it up and took advantage. And all of a sudden, they take a lead into halftime. But the second half was like that too. There were stretches where Carolina wasn't great. I remember a particular stretch where like RJ Davis couldn't even dribble the ball for like a couple of sequences. And you're like, what's going on here? Michigan State hits a couple shots and all of a sudden it's a tight game again. And then, towards the end of the game, Carolina ends up, running away with it, winning by 16. So I remember talking to you about that off camera after the game. And you were kind of saying, that was my first NCAA tournament game that I covered in person. I've covered a lot of other sporting events, ACC tournament, Duke Carolina games, football bowl games, but that was my first time covering a tournament game in person. And I remember talking to you after the game and you said, that's kind of the way these tournament games go. It's like every few minutes can almost be like its own increment there. Like this happens here and then the other team kind of falls off for a little bit and the other team makes a run. I think you hinted at as many games as you covered that you see that quite often in tournament play like this. So I say all that to say, when you look back at last weekend, I think it was a pretty positive weekend for North Carolina. I mean, they're still playing, so obviously it was a successful one, but did you learn anything about North Carolina you didn't know before? Do you feel maybe more confident that Carolina can make a run to the Final Four after last week, or maybe the opposite? What were your thoughts with the Carolina's performances and what you took away from Charlotte this past weekend?
When you get to this juncture in the season, there are no surprises from within the framework of a team. Now, a team could surprise by winning a game that maybe it's not expected to, but how it does so, you'll see guys do things that they've done previously during the year, some of their higher end stuff. If they don't play well, you'll see the reminders of some of the low points of the year will come out, because you are who you are when you get to this point of the season. To go by what you were saying a few minutes ago, the ebb and flow of tournament games are there simply because there's so much emotion involved. There's so much intensity in the game. There's so much placed on the importance of every possession. You miss a shot in December, 8 minutes into the game, it's a missed shot. Nobody stresses, nobody worries, nobody tweets about the missed shot. You miss a shot now, it's like that could cost us the game and we could be out. There's a different level of in-game scrutiny by fans. There's a different, the sky is falling mentality from fans. And then the euphoria is great, but the euphoria is tempered in some ways because of the fear of missing that shot, the fear of the turnover, the fear of losing. The NCAA tournament is a 2.5, 3, it's a 3-week event laced in fear. The fear of it ending. So when you have that, you have games like Alabama and Grand Canyon where they're playing. It's like the ball had oil on it. You see weird stuff happen because of fear. Fear can freeze you. Fear can inspire you. And often it does both in the same game and sometimes in the same sequence. What I did see from Carolina over the weekend, and this confirms things we've seen this year, but to see it happen in consecutive games, to me, is very much a positive, is that the Tar Heels, especially in the Michigan State game, it didn't require Michigan State going into the tank for Carolina to suddenly go on a run and take the lead, go on that 23-3 run. This Carolina team doesn't need someone else to open the door for them. This team has the ability to kick that door open themselves. And that's what they did. That's the switch. You go back to the Jalen Washington turnaround jump shot. They were struggling to get buckets. They weren't running smooth offense. RJ was starting, and it appeared he was starting to go into takeover mode because they weren't getting anything. Michigan State wasn't letting them run their cuts. They weren't letting them run their screens. They were just disrupting so much. And then Jalen Washington, who has the best turnaround jump shot I've seen at North Carolina since Bryce Johnson's senior year, he does the thing that these kids know him best for. And that little moment right there was a sequence of normalcy for this group. And I think that enabled them to muster up to kick that door in. I don't think Michigan State just kind of went, Olay, here you go. You're going a 23-3 run. I think Carolina enforced its will to make that run happen. That's what champions do. Champions don't just wait for the door to open, because maybe the door doesn't open. So if it's not, and you're playing a Tom Izzo team and they're rugged and they're beating you up physically, they're beating you at bully ball, and they're getting shot after shot in the lane, then you have two choices. One, get your butt kicked and go home, or two, you kick the door open yourselves. Mm-hmm. And Carolina kicked the door open. They did it in a different kind of way against Wagner. It was more stylistically because of the zone that Wagner went to. Mm-hmm. So I think that carried a lot of value. That's what I wrote about. It was Wagner, but it was a zone. And RJ scored 17 points in the second half, and he did it against that zone. He did it getting good shots against the zone. So it was good basketball. It was smart basketball. It was efficient basketball. And I think that those are all reinforcers, reminders, the types of little experiences that you can gather with you and take to the next round of the tournament. I am not a believer that if you're hot, you're hot, unless you're playing so out of what we know is your character, like NC State. They've got a different kind of mojo going right now that can fuel them. But generally speaking, a team can be great one round and get their butts handed to them the next round.
Yeah.
That's the way the tournament is. There's not a lot of connecting from games. Occasionally there is, and I use the NC State example as being one. That's one of those occasions where there is some connecting, because it's a different mojo. Those kids are going through something so uniquely different than they've experienced all year, because they never had those runs. They never had that mojo during the year. The other teams that are there right now have all had really good stretches, and they've kind of been knocked back a little bit, and then they've had really good stretches. And that's kind of where they're sort of normal right now. State's just riding this euphoria thing.
Riding the wave,
And I think the euphoria thing could take them past Marquette. And quite frankly, I think that they could beat Houston too, or Duke, whoever they would face in that regional final. But generally speaking, the most important thing to accumulate are coats of armor in the zone, and then having to overcome and meet and exceed the fight that Michigan State brought to the court Saturday. That carries with you. Carolina was ready. I see a lot of people say, man, if they play like that, they're going to get bounced. They were ready to go, man. It's just that Michigan State brought it on a Tom Izzo level. Mm-hmm. You see why Hall of Famers are Hall of Famers this time of year. And Izzo's team took everything it had and said, we've got to punch them right away. We've got to surge right away, because if we don't, we could get run out. And they did, and they made it a game as long as they could, given the fact that they're now a 15-loss team and North Carolina's a 1 seed. So all in all, I think it was good for Carolina. They've got some grizzled stuff that they're taking with them to LA, and they're going to need it Thursday night, and they're going to need it Saturday if they play Saturday. That's what they're going to have to. That's one of their skills. That's one of their weapons. If you have checkpoints, check boxes about all the different qualities that UNC has, what I'm talking about needs to be a bigger box than a lot of other things, because this is absolutely who this team is. And we saw it last weekend.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I want to talk about, real quickly, just before we look ahead, I want to talk about bench production a little bit, because this is something I wanted to hit on in 3 things. But again, because of the circumstances we were in, we just didn't have a ton of time to sit there and chat like we usually do. Bench production, I think, was a positive from this past weekend too. You look at the Wagner game. I know it's against Wagner, but still, Jalen Withers had a massive game. Really, really positive off the bench. Seth Trimble continuing to press. Even Jalen Washington coming in and doing some things. But that Michigan State game, AJ, I think I tweeted about it after the game. But you had Jalen Withers coming in again and doing some, not putting up the same stats he did against Wagner, but doing some really nice things. Hit some big shots, particularly some putback rebounds and layups that he had in the second half too, which helped Carolina. When they were kind of pushing out on that lead. Paxton Wojcik coming in. I mean, I think you described his play where he, grabbed the rebound, went right down the center of the court, then kicked it out to RJ Davis for a 3. That's a coach's son type of play, with his dad. Funny enough, his dad sitting there on the Michigan State bench, 20 feet away from him when it happened. He did some positive things. Seth Trimble, I thought, was absolutely fantastic defensively. One of the best defensive performances I've seen from anybody all year in college basketball. I mean, he blocked a 7-footer like 2 or 3 times. And I'm going to say this too. He only got credited with 2 blocks. And I've seen some people on the boards and Twitter talking about this. He had 3 blocks. Me and Bryant were sitting there looking at it, and we actually kept refreshing the stat broadcast afterwards. Like, why are they not updating this? Like, he clearly just blocked that basketball. Going off on a tangent there, but I thought Seth Trimble was absolutely fantastic as well. So I remember I think you referenced early in the year a conversation that you had with Tyler Hansbrough, where you referenced it on one of these podcasts when you said, I think Hansbrough kind of said that a guy like Withers coming off the bench and producing big minutes and making a positive impact, that's what it takes to win national championships. You have to have guys that come off the bench. I'm not saying they have to give you 20 points tonight. Absolutely not. But they have to come in and make a difference. We saw that with multiple different guys against Michigan State on Saturday. So I think when I'm looking at, I think there was a lot of positives to take away from this weekend, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about that bench production a little bit, because I thought that Michigan State game was like, okay, if the bench keeps doing that, and RJ and Armando keep playing well, Ingram and Cormac have games like they did against Michigan State where they're combining for, close to 30 points. Okay, this team could really go on and win something if they keep doing this. So talk to me a little bit about that bench production and what you saw from that this past weekend.
We have talked about the bench all year, especially once we figured out what the rotation was. Once Hubert showed us what the rotation was by how he went about each game. Each of those guys went through some tough periods. Seth had the concussion, and he admitted to me last weekend in DC that he came back too soon. If you look at their two worst defensive games of the regular season, one was Clemson, and he was out for that.
Yeah.
And the other one was at Syracuse. That was the game he came back, but he shouldn't have played. He wasn't ready, and they were terrible. And so he kind of knows that, look, I'm the guy. If I'm able to give us 20 minutes, we're going to be much better defensively. So he understands that. And then Jalen Withers had a stretch like 8 games where he didn't score a field goal.
Oh, I know. Mm-hmm.
And he was the last one. We talked about this, in early February. He was the last one. You have a puzzle in the dining room table, and it's almost done, but there's one piece missing, and you can't find it. Mm-hmm. And you look around on the floor and you think it might be next to the base of the table on the floor. And it's not there. You look under the china cabinet. Maybe it fell off and flew underneath there, and it's not there. You're wondering, where the hell is this piece? I got to complete this puzzle, and it drives you crazy. Mm-hmm. Jalen Withers was that piece. Mm-hmm. And they have found the piece, and it's a big one, and they stuck it in there, and now the puzzle looks perfect. From a distance, it actually looks like a photo. Mm-hmm. And that's what Withers provides. These guys are unique. I'm not going to throw Paxson in here just for this comparison, but I'll add him in a moment. Withers, Trimble, and Washington are very unique to any of the 5 starters. So when they come in, it changes games. Carolina's a different club when it's Withers out there as opposed to Cadeau. And you see that stress teams. It affects how they run their offense, but it also means RJ goes on the ball. And the guy that could put 35 up is on the ball. So you've got to be cognizant of that. Carolina runs different actions. They run more sets when RJ's on the ball as opposed to Elliot. They can run more actions when Elliot's on the ball. They could run more freelance when Elliot's on the ball. So, and because RJ's coming off screens more often. So they're a different team. When they put Jalen Washington out there, you have to defend that jumper. You have to keep him from cutting. He has gotten better this season at rolling to the basket, catching and finishing. I talked to him about that in DC as well, because he had a bucket like that in DC. And I said, you take me through you learning to how to roll better. It's about timing. It's about reading and reacting. So much of this is reaction. It's read and react. And he's gotten more experience, so he's gotten better at doing that. And then, of course, Trimble could score. He's added that 2-dribble, middle-of-the-lane jump shot that wasn't there earlier this season. So those guys are getting better, and they're contributing. And now, every time they go on the floor, they are positively impacting games. Mm-hmm. So they are another element to this team. They're not Band-Aids. There ain't no Band-Aids. And Paxson Wojcik is not, because he's a feisty SO you-know-what. Mm-hmm. And he showed that the other night. So they've got 4 guys they bring off the bench. They all play with energy. They all have plenty of skill. Paxson can play. Mm-hmm. That 3 he missed the other day, he's going to hit one in L.A. If they advance to the Final Four, he's going to hit one in L.A. You mark it down.
Prediction. I like that prediction right there.
Well, it's just a feel, so more than it is a prediction. So that's going to be why. If the bench gives them nothing at some point moving forward, then that puts that much more pressure on Harrison and Cormac to produce a lot and play well and efficiently. And that's not a given because Cormac is a streaky shooter. So you cannot pencil him in ever. You can't pencil Harrison in from a scoring standpoint because sometimes he's got matchups that make it tough for him to back a defender in. He's got to find ways to get his points, and he's not so bouncy and super creative that he could just take guys off the dribble and play the baseline really well. He's not a great baseline guy. He could catch and shoot, but you need him to score. If he's going to get to 15, 16, 17, he's got to find other ways to score. So if the bench is producing, it takes a little bit of the pressure off that. They could survive a game where Cormac is 1 for 8 or 2 for 9 and Harrison has 12 points. That's not a recipe to continue winning. They could survive a game like that. But if Cormac and Harrison are minimally solid as far as offensive production goes and above, and the bench is able to produce, that takes his team up another notch. Tyler Hansbrough knows it. He understands it. And when you have a bench producing like that, and you have some screw you guys that will brawl to the end of time, like Jalen Withers and Seth Trimble, who, by the way, one of the shots he blocked the other day, hang time. Oh, here comes the left hand to block the shot. Like, how did he hang up?
Ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It's like he was frozen in time. And was able to bring the left hand and just say, not happening, guys. So they improve by changing with production when the bench comes in. So they got a good thing going. Kudos to Hubert for using the bench really well in Charlotte. And he's been using Withers well. And I really like the way Hubert is handling Cadeau with his minutes and when to sit him and when to sit him for a while. And I know that Elliot got beaten up a little bit the other day on social media because he's not hitting the jumpers, but let me tell you something about Elliot Cadeau, and this shows you how mentally tough he is. This is a great sign this occurred in this sequence. He's on the bench for almost 10 minutes in the second half, 9:56, I think, to be exact. And I even put on the board, we may not see Elliot again today. Hubert puts him in at 6:57 left. At 6:45, he converts a driving layup because he saw the defense shift. His vision is beautiful. Boom, darts to the basket, scores. 12 seconds after coming into the game, after sitting for 10 minutes when he was pulled because he was struggling a little bit. And his body language wasn't great after the missed jumpers. Hubert sat him over there. Now, it's Marcus Page. It's Sean May, who talks to the kids a lot on the bench, and it's Hubert Davis, and it's Elliot Cadeau, who is a young guy, play with all these older dudes, and it's forced him to mature at a rapid pace. That, to me, is a moment in time that you go back and look in a couple of weeks and say, yeah, he played well in LA, and that moment triggered that. That was a moment where Elliot Cadeau went up a notch. And what's interesting is in post-game interviews in the locker room Saturday, that's the best Elliot's been all year. He felt good. Yeah, he felt good. He felt good. There was confidence coming out of his mouth. You know, he's pretty good at looking you in the eye and doing those things, but he doesn't say a lot sometimes. But he was talking. I think he felt good. That was a hurdle. That was a hurdle for him. And when you get past the mental hurdle at this time of year, suddenly the obstacles that might be in front of you aren't really there. They're not really speed bumps. It's just a line in the road, not an actual speed bump. And that may have occurred for him Saturday.
Yeah, and hitting on him just for a second. I mean, I think there was some stat, wasn't he like Carolina like plus 20 when he was in the game or something like that? I mean, it was some ridiculous stat line, which I think shows, I mean, again, it's not all about scoring. And we've talked about it with Armando Bacot all year. Like, people just dogging on him because he's not scoring 30 points and grabbing 30 rebounds every game. And it's like, guys, it's not, don't just look at the stat sheet, like watch the game and watch how he plays. He's impacting games in a positive way. So I do agree. This could be like you mentioned, could be a seminal moment where we look back in a couple weeks and say, that was the moment that he became maybe, I don't know if comfortable is the right word, but I'm going to use the word comfortable in this tournament setting and felt like, okay, I'm here. I know I'm not shooting great, but I can still contribute besides.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you say comfortable, how does a young athlete with the responsibility of having the keys to running a North Carolina basketball team as the point guard, when you're the young dude and everyone else has been legal drinking age for a decade, seemingly, how do you get what allows you to gain the right measure of comfort that you're talking about? Tell me what must occur. Well,
I think it's an interesting question, because I think some people will look at it and say, well, if he just hits a shot or two, if he hits a 3 or 2, he'll be feeling comfortable. I don't think it's like that with Cadeau. I think with him, you mentioned that sequence there of he comes to the bench for a second, he's getting talked to by the coaches, and you put the tweet out of like, hey, he might not come in for a while. He might not come back in the game. You know what I mean? And he goes back in and he makes that play where he sees the defense shift, and he did what he's been doing all year. He sees it and he goes and makes a play at the basket. That to me right there is a comfort level, is someone who's a young guy, keys to Carolina, like you mentioned, playing in his first NCAA tournament. It's not necessarily about hitting shots or making a really nice pass to somebody in the corner or Cormac Ryan, who's 6 years older than you, coming and patting you on the back in the middle of the first half and saying, Elliot, you're good. You can do this. Like you're fine in this environment. No, sometimes it's just as simple as making a play like that. And it makes you say, okay, like I can do this and I'm here. Cause there's no doubt Elliot Cadeau is a confident kid, but there is like we've talked about, the tournament's a different animal, man. So I think any young player with the responsibility that he has, playing in that environment for the first time, especially in a game against a Michigan State team with the Sweet 16 on the line, it can be as simple as just making a play like that. That's my answer. You might have a completely different one, but that's kind of how I saw it on Saturday with that specific play that you referenced earlier.
If there's a word path that takes you to comfort, the word confidence comes before comfort.
Yeah.
You can't be comfortable unless you're confident. Mm-hmm. And that play was a play he's made a lot in the regular season. And for him, he felt normal.
Mm-hmm. That normalcy,
He didn't feel normal when he gets the ball in the perimeter and the MSU guard just backs off.
Yeah, just literally.
And he misses it. And he has that, I would call it a nervous laughter, but it wasn't really a nervous laughter. The laugh that he had on his facial expressions was sort of masking something else. Mm-hmm. But that play was him doing something he's done forever. Mm-hmm. And he did with the Swedish national team. He did against Riverside earlier this year. He did against Duke, whoever. He did it. Did it against UConn and MSG, but he did it there, and it gave him some confidence, because it also showed that he was losing himself in the game. 10 minutes on the bench, comes back in. 12 seconds later, he's lost himself in the game. There's a mental toughness that goes with that. There's a maturity that goes with that. The surrounding lifting him up. You mentioned Cormac. There was a time when the two of them were waiting to check in at the scores table, and Cormac had his ear the entire time they were sitting there. After one of the missed threes in the first half, when he was wide open, he's going up the court and he's got that. It's a smile because it's human nature, man. There's no right or wrong way. And Harrison runs by and he's barking encouragement in his ear as he goes back to find his guy defensively.
I remember that play. Mm-hmm.
These kids, the other guy, they're totally in tune with Elliot. They know what he's going through at times. And this is an Elliot thing. I think Elliot, in the end, he's the guy that has to do it. And he's the guy that found that measure of comfort. He's the guy that made the play that gave himself confidence. He's the guy that lost himself in the game and did what is normal to him. But he's got a lot of help pushing him forward. And that's the thing that you got to like about this team, that is totally genuine. And that's why they're able to win when they don't look great sometimes, because there is such a strong connectedness to this group. There is such a, we will do whatever we have to do to help this guy be successful because it makes us successful. Mm-hmm. The selflessness on this team and the care factor. And I know this may sound ridiculous to some people. They think, you're overdoing it. No, it's real. You never heard me talk about selflessness and care factor last year.
No,
because I didn't think it was entirely there. They never really got to that side of the bridge. They've been on that side of the river, on the other side of the bridge, for a long time with this club. They're not crossing back and forth like maybe last year's club did, or if they even crossed fully at all at any time. If you understand what I'm saying, I hope I'm not losing you in that point, but they're there. And so that was a Elliot thing. And it was a collective thing. It was the staff, it was the teammates, and it was him. And those are the moments you move forward with, that you take with you. You don't take great performances with you. You take more of the intangible stuff, because once you stick it in that bag, it's there. And it could come out in the next round or the round after that if you need it to. And that's why this team has a great chance to continue advancing for a while, because they have so much stuff like that in their bag.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. There's just so many guys that can make plays on any given play and on any given night. And again, carry Carolina, but, help propel them to victory. It's not like they're over reliant on just one or two guys. When Carolina's at its best, it's a collective effort with everybody contributing. That's when we've seen Carolina at its best version. So from a Carolina fan perspective, for those watching, long may that continue, starting first with Alabama on Thursday. We're going to talk about Bama in a second. Then we'll head out. But I want to ask you real quick, as someone who's covered a lot of obviously covered UNC for a very long time, covered national championship teams, and if not national championship teams, teams like the 2016 team that, got all the way to the final and lost on that heartbreaking shot to Villanova. You know what a championship caliber team looks like. You've seen it with your own two eyes. You've covered it, and you've been in those locker rooms after wins and after, devastating losses, like I just mentioned. When you look at this team, AJ, does this UNC team compare? I should ask you, not does it, how does this UNC team compare to some of those maybe championship or really good Carolina teams that we've seen over the last, we don't need to go all the way back to 1982, but as we've seen over maybe the last 15 to 20 years? Do you see similarities there, or is it not really? What are your thoughts on that?
I have covered very closely the last three UNC national champions.
Yeah.
And I've covered some other national champions too. Mm-hmm. But I'll stick with Carolina. Mm-hmm. What I just described, 2005 had, if you looked in their bag, it's the first thing you'd see. Mm-hmm. 2009, it was nestled next to amazing players, just ridiculous talent in want. 2017, I think it's more like this team, where it's not maybe laden with guys who will play 15 years in the NBA. Who knows? I do think Armando can play, and I think we saw the best defensive player in college basketball Saturday.
Agreed.
With him. He was fun. He wasn't great early because he picked up that early foul, and he acknowledged that he was a little bit passive because he said, you know what, 2 points isn't worth me getting another foul. Mm-hmm. So the people that were complaining, that goes into that. You have to think of the bigger picture, but he was awesome defensively in so many ways. So, yeah, this team, when you look in the bag, they have what the 2017 team had. The bench has gotten to a point now where it's really giving them quite a bit. That bench was Nate Britt. That bench was Tony Bradley, who was kind of hot and cold. That bench was Luke May, who was awesome in Memphis, didn't score a point in Phoenix, but he got to help get them there. There's a similarity with this bench and that bench. And that Nate didn't change things so much. He was a nice compliment to Joel Berry when Nate went in and played. He didn't make a lot of mistakes, and he was a good player. I do think that the three that mainly play now off the bench are more uniquely different from the starters than those reserves were. Mm-hmm. So I think in that sense, there are parts of this team that are better than that one, that remind me of that one, but also are a little bit different and might be able to handle some stuff. But they both had that bag I was just talking about. And I will submit this as Exhibit A. Carolina won the national title against Gonzaga that year. They shot 35.3% from the field that night, and they were out-rebounded. And they won the national championship. This team was out-rebounded the other day for the first time since December 20th. Mm-hmm. They were even in points in the paint. They were even in fast break points. And they won. Mm-hmm. They have an extra component that not everybody has. That's why this team can cut down the nets. It's going to be very difficult for them to, because they're still working on the consistency factor, but that club did too. Isaiah Hicks was not a plug-and-play guy. True. Isaiah Hicks was awful against Oregon in the semifinals, and he was really good in the title game, hit that huge shot with 40 seconds or whatever it was left. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't super consistent. Theo wasn't always providing lots of numbers. So there were similarities, and there are similarities now. And I do think that the whole of it, RJ is more a guaranteed bucket than anybody on that team was at that time, including Justin. Mm-hmm. So they have that guarantee. They have more of a guaranteed bucket, in my opinion.
I would agree.
And I think, and Armando is better than they were in the post. He's better than Kennedy was, especially right now. So at the score in the perimeter and in the post, this club is better. As far as the bench goes, and maybe the way that they change games and the energy, a draw or this bench is better. The way it's playing, the way it's been playing the last few weeks. Now, we'll see. And I don't mean to make this a comparison thing. 17 versus now.
I know what you're saying.
I'm trying to paint a picture here for people. Because you asked me the question, and I've been thinking this for a while, and I really think that they've kind of trended in that direction. And oh, by the way, the 17 team was 29-7 going into the Sweet 16. Wow. This team's 29-7 going into the Sweet 16.
That's a little weird right there. So it's too good to be true, right? You mentioned Justin Jackson, RJ Davis, 2 ACC players a year in the same year. So, there's a lot of similarities in some ways between this year's team and 2017, and not so much with 09, I think, just because that 09 team was like, I was telling you off camera that the 09 team the UConn of now kind of reminds me a little bit of that 09 team where they're kind of just like steamrolling everybody. And it's kind of like, they look like the best team in the country. Doesn't mean they're going to win it, but that's the team that is a number 1 overall seed for a reason. So, and then, going back to 05, I think you said there is some similarities too with that 05 team with, grittiness.
They all had their drive.
Yeah.
Look, they all had their drive. 05, those seniors.
Oh God.
The first three guys I talked to in the locker room in St. Louis, Melvin Scott, Jackie Manuel, whom I spoke with last week at DC, he's AU, really enjoying coaching at AU, and Jawad Williams, because I was there. They're 8-20 year. I covered 22 of the 28 games. I was in that locker room after Melvin Scott couldn't get the ball past half court against Wake Forest when he was a freshman. And I was there when he hit those 2 free throws against Villanova in the Sweet 16 in 2005. Huge. So they had that burn. They had to overcome that. The 3 juniors on that team also had to deal with the problems that were going on in the program with the leadership at the time. And I don't want to dog anybody because we all learn from things and get better. Yeah. So I'm not going to go there with that. 09 had the 40-12. That was an albatross hanging over them all year long. 40-12 from the year before. And then 17 obviously had the buzzer shot. This club's they've got the crazy path that Armando has been on, the one that RJ, freshman coming in and there's COVID, and Roy Williams is a coach that needs to be face-to-face with you. Son, I need to have this conversation. And they're doing it on Zoom half the time because of the craziness around COVID. And then you've got the Caleb factor and they flare up and then they disappoint. So they've got all these different teams had certain inner burns, and this club's got a lot of it. And they've got a lot of individual stuff and they have it collectively. But I will say about 09, they had a lot of selflessness. And when you have the greatest player in program history as a collegian, and that's Tyler Hansbrough, yielding to Ty Lawson saying, "Take us home, brother." That's the epitome of selflessness. And Tyler did that year. So they had it too. And if you're going to win a title, you got to have those things. So this team has all that stuff. Do they have enough to win a title? We'll see. Yeah. But they have a crap load of artillery and weaponry that they're taking to Los Angeles that absolutely is the stuff that national champions take with them.
No, I couldn't agree more with that. I think this team definitely has the potential to do it, as we've talked about for big portions of this year. But AJ, in order for Carolina to win that national championship, got to get through Alabama first. Let's talk about Alabama real quick, and then we'll head out of here. We're getting close to an hour, which is about what we like to hit these UNC basketball shows on, so it's working out well. Sweet 16.
We'll do a lot more Bama stuff when I'm in LA.
Yeah.
After I have a chance to, if we get to watch them practice, I'll watch them, and I'll spend some time around the Crimson Tide, and I'll get a much better feel. So we'll do something Wednesday when I'm in LA. Perfect.
And just to hit on them real quickly before we head out, like I mentioned earlier, 4-seed Alabama coming off a win over Grand Canyon, and before that beat College of Charleston in the first round. Just to run through a couple of their common opponents in North Carolina, not a ton, but 2. Tennessee lost to them twice this year. Carolina obviously beating Tennessee, blowing them out in Chapel Hill earlier in the year. And then they also lost to Kentucky as well, a team that North Carolina lost to earlier in the year too. So not a ton of common opponents, but a couple there, obviously, with them beating the SEC. 23-11 overall, 13-5 in conference play. Yeah, Clemson as well. They did lose to Clemson earlier in the year too. Good shot on that. Even lost to Wake Forest in an exhibition game on October 29th, if you want to throw that one in there. I don't think anybody cares about that.
By the way, Clemson,
there too.
Clemson won at Bama and Carolina.
Yeah, and they're Sweet 16.
Clemson can win that region, kids.
I think so too.
That's Carolina's region. Clemson could win the region.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating if Clemson and Carolina ended up meeting up in the I guess it would be the Elite Eight. I guess it'll be either Arizona or Clemson, right? Because they play each other.
Okay. Let me ask you. I know we got to get going here, and you got stuff you got to do, and I got a crap load of stuff to do as well. That's 2 crap load mentions in this podcast. So I have to stop the rest of the week. That's like a Roy Williams term. I think I adopted that from him.
I think
crap
probably
load every once in a while. Mm-hmm. And what the crap were you thinking, or something like that? Anyway, see how this crap rubs off? We don't even know it. So, do you want to see an ACC Elite Eight in the Midwest or the South rather, with Clemson, or excuse me, State versus West. Duke and Dallas?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then in the West, Carolina versus Clemson? Or do you want to see the circus that is Caleb Love versus Carolina?
You know me, man. My tone a little bit with that Caleb Love game has changed. I'm kind of leaning. We did a show last week, I think, when the Selection Sunday show a couple of weeks ago. And I mean, you remember I was gung ho. I was like, I need that Arizona matchup. I still would like to see it, but I'm leaning more towards your viewpoint on it now, where I almost don't want to deal with the circus that surrounds it. Of, oh my God, Caleb Love in North Carolina is playing again. All that turmoil last year and all the stuff that went on that the national media people who actually think they know what's going on will be writing about. I think it would be. I'll say this. I almost think it would be equally as cool what happens. So I would love to see an ACC. All ACC final between Duke and State in that region. I think that'd be cool. It'd be really interesting too, especially for Tobacco Road in this area. But for the West, for me, it's kind of a win-win. You're either going to see Carolina and Clemson, which I think is super intriguing matchup. I think I'm feeling better about that game. If I'm a Carolina fan, I would feel better about playing Clemson than I would Arizona. But the Arizona angle is super fascinating too, because of what it is with Caleb Love. And I think that would be a trickier game, at least on paper. But my tone with that has even changed a little bit. I'm not as gung-ho about a Carolina-Arizona rematch as I was a couple weeks ago. There's just going to be too much of a circus and too much of this narrative where like no one's going to talk about the actual game. It's going to be I know. Caleb Love in Carolina, and even on a more minute level, it'll just be Caleb Love and RJ Davis all over again. We'll get to rehash that story for the 7th millionth time. So
and that's a dead story to those guys.
It's dead.
I've talked to RJ about it. That's a dead story to those guys.
Yeah, they could care less about that now.
Since I'm going to be there, and if it's a circus, that means I'm going to have to deal with the actual circus, of it.
You're the one who has to deal with it. Yeah.
There won't be elephant manure on the ground, but it's going to seem like it. The kind of circus it's going to be. I like Caleb. I've never backed off from acknowledging that. I had a good media player relationship with him when I covered him. Mm-hmm. That would be an awful lot for him. I think it would be far more difficult for him than it would be for anybody on Carolina's team.
Yeah, it's a good point.
And Caleb, even in Arizona, has a tendency of trying to do too much and sort of make it the Caleb Love show, or as you like to call it, I love your terminology, the Caleb Love experience, gives everybody the Caleb Love experience. It would be really hard on him. Mm-hmm. And he might either go off and score 40, or he would just have like the worst game of his life.
Yeah, it's a coin toss.
So amped up.
Coin toss, yeah.
I don't want to deal with the circus simply because that matchup, if you disregard the name of their best player, is intriguing as you know what. And that to me is what our Elite Eight should look like. Those two teams going up against each other. And there are 1,000 matchups. And even with the benches that you can look at and say, man, we could dissect this game in advance for a long time and it's fun. Some games aren't that fun. Some games it's like 2 or 3 things and there you go. That is an ebb and flow in the dissection of it in advance if it were to occur. But it would be totally overshadowed by Caleb and RJ. And I think it would bring back a certain somebody into the discourse that doesn't need to be in the discourse. It's not fair to her. That stuff is long gone. It's in the past. But I know how the low-hanging fruit element of our profession loves to swing for clickbait and the easy stuff because it's a lot less demanding than actually sitting down and doing work and peeling away layers. So unfortunately, that would be the case. I would have to write that story because it is news.
Yeah, of course.
We would have to talk about it on a podcast because it is news. But at Tar Heel Illustrated, you would get a ton of other stuff. Personally, I'd rather see Carolina play Clemson in a regional final because I want to see the ACC continue to win because I love the trolling. The winner of this NCAA tournament are the ACC people, particularly the media, trolling the Nationals because of what the ACC has done.
ACC
so
on fire.
That's it.
Last night.
That's it. Crown them now. Cut down the nets. One shining moment today, and it's Twitter. And you could see all those tweets on a thread on our board because I decided to go nuts and just start copy link, and pop them in there. And as soon as we finish this, I'm going to go back and see what's been thrown out there the last couple of hours. When you've got B-Rob and Theo Pinson, and you've got former Julius Hodge and guys like that just tweeting about the ACC. It's like, hey, there's been all this bickering and lawsuits and all this other crap going on. And you know what? We're all in this together, boys. Let's hug each other.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. That to me is the story.
I love it.
I want that story. I don't want that story to die. I want it to keep going.
Yeah, if you want to see AJ go off on the ACC, not go off on the ACC, but talk a little bit more about this on a video form, go check out the Daily Drop we put out on Monday too, because he does hit on the ACC in that one in kind of the I don't want to say disrespect, but that's a good word to use that they got from the national media when it comes to this tournament seeding stuff. Because it just, but AJ, I mean, it's just it's every. Don't we have this conversation like every year? It feels like. Where
okay, I know for a fact
they beat everybody.
Look, I know that the committee was butting heads about analytics versus your freaking eyes.
Yeah, what you can see. Yeah,
and more rationale. You don't even have to know talking about basketball to understand the analytics or just the analytics. And there was a tug of war, and the analytics won. You heard the NCAA selection committee head say, we treated games in November just as importantly as we did early March. What other universe does that? The whole objective, the most beautiful thing about the way it used to be was getting your team ready for the tournament. Roy Williams not even working on zone offense until the Christmas break. Because you get better. Dean Smith playing a lot of guys, and he trims over. The Carolina fans know it's in their culture. It's in their DNA. You trim the rotation at the beginning of February. That suddenly becomes your post. So you're a different team. But these morons don't know that because they're generally not basketball people. It's a lot easier to look at some stupid net formula and quad 1 wins and quad 2 wins than it is to actually watch a game and know something about basketball. The whole system is broken. It's messed up. And there are some people on the committee that know that and fought against it and didn't win. One of whom works in Chapel Hill.
Yeah. Well, you know, my opinion.
And he's well aware of how messed up the system is. It needs to be changed.
Oh, of course. I mean, you know my opinion on the net, and I know it's the same as yours. The net needs to be shipped out to an island in the middle of the South Pacific and just nuked. I mean, it makes no sense. It's one of the worst things that's ever happened in college basketball. Zero sense whatsoever. I propose the ACC go to a 10-game conference schedule next year, and everybody play 21 non-conference games against VMI. Yeah. Just to manipulate the net. Yeah. It's just get rid of it, man. It makes no sense.
And everybody goes 500 in league play, and every team in the league's got 25, 26 wins.
Yeah.
Let's see what they do then.
Yeah. See how the net works out then, right?
They'll have Boston College as a freaking 2 seed.
Yeah. Oh God. I don't even want to think about that. Yeah. It needs to be destroyed and rebuilt in some way, shape, or form. Good try. But it didn't work. So let's like I say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But this thing is broken. You need to fix it. So
I'm pulling rank on you. Terrible try. Yeah. The fact that it's one of those things that was never who got paid money to sit in a room and say, that's a good idea, boys. Let's go with this.
Do that.
Who made that decision? Whoever it is, they should be in the unemployed. They should be sprucing up their LinkedIn profile right now.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's ridiculous, and the fact that it's carried on for as many seasons as it has now is a testament to just
what a disgrace.
I was gonna channel my inner Brett Friedlander and drop a you know what, but I'm not gonna do that here. I'm gonna refrain from.
Oh, he wrote a column Sunday night for Saturday Road. I promoted it in the drop, and I'm promoting it here. Go read it. Brett
I'll go read that. I love
awesome.
Brett.
He is awesome at what he does. He pulls no punches. Saturday Road, Brett Friedlander, go read it. He put it out late Sunday night, and I could hear the exclamation point being pounded into the keyboard.
Just firing from the hip, right? Just firing from the hip.
Just an AR-15 typing on the damn keyboard.
I'll have to go read that myself. That's absolutely fantastic. I know that's good from Brett, as he doesn't hold back when it comes to stuff like that. But we're going to head out in a second. But we'll talk about Alabama more this week. But on the surface, AJ, I think it's a pretty intriguing matchup, and it's going to be a challenge for North Carolina. Yeah,
don't put any stock into what you saw Sunday with Alabama against Grand Canyon. Mm-hmm. That will not connect. Mm-hmm. Alabama won the game in which it played like crap, in which Grand Canyon tried to pull it in a direction that Alabama doesn't prefer to play, and still won. And Grand Canyon's a pretty good team. They're better than 12 seed. They got some dude.
Yeah.
If you put Minnesota on their uniform, or if you put Ole Miss on the uniform, or if you put Syracuse on the uniform, the average fan wouldn't know the difference. Mm-hmm. They physically look like power conference team, and they have some skill. Alabama did not look very good, but guys, they're like 8 in the net. I know that we just bashed the net, but a lot of people use the net to gauge things. They're KenPom, they're high in KenPom as well. Mm-hmm. So KenPom's far more accurate, and I think more respected by people in my business. So in our business, so I would put some stock in that. They're good. We'll talk to David Sisk about it. David has seen Alabama in person multiple times.
Yeah.
He knows the Alabama team and program, and Nate Oates. He loves Nate Oates' style much more than I do. So I will lean on him for some of this, but Carolina fans need to wipe away what you saw Sunday. That ain't got nothing to do with what you're going to see Thursday. If it does, it's because Carolina makes Alabama that team. But that was not the Alabama you should expect to see. This club statistically ranks very high in a lot of areas, even defensively. They give up a lot of points, but there's a lot of possessions. They're number 3 in offensive tempo. And I'm going to leave you with this stat as a teaser, because we'll build a lot toward Alabama this week. Carolina last Thursday played the number 361 team in offensive tempo and scored 90 points. On Saturday, they played the number 309 team in tempo and scored 85 points. Thursday night, they play the number 3 team in tempo, the leading scoring team in the nation. So it might be fun.
I think
if you like racehorse hoops, it might be fun.
I think Roy Williams is going to be absolutely loving that Thursday game. As long as Carolina wins, he's going to be sitting there like, man, this is just my type of basketball right here.
You're going to see some rip and runs. You're going to see some rip and runs after made baskets by both teams.
Oh, yeah. And it's going to be a fun game to watch. And, we'll see what happens on Thursday night. Keep it locked to TarHeelIllustrated.com. AJ's headed out to L.A. tomorrow, Tuesday. He'll be there at the media day and all that jazz. So keep it locked. So you can subscribe for $8.33 a month, be a premium message board, or get access, to our premium message boards, become a premium subscriber, get access to a ton of other content you can only get if you are signed up, just $8.33 a month. And we have not, AJ, I should say, I've only been here for 5 years. AJ hasn't changed that price since he took over back in 2014, right? 2014?
August 1st, 2014. It was $8.33 a month for a 1-year subscription. Then it still is.
Yeah. And inflation is real, guys, but we're keeping it the same for you.
And we don't ask for money here on YouTube.
No, we don't. We obviously, we do run ads during the day, but
we might start.
Yeah. If anybody let us know.
Guys, I got to pay the staff, man.
Yeah. If anybody's interested, shameless plug. If anybody's interested in sponsoring, let us know. We'd love to talk to you.
This is going to be the most expensive postseason in history for me.
Yeah. Going West
Houston
Coast,
in 2017 or 2016 was the Final Four itself was almost $3,000.
Oh, I believe it. I remember talking to you about that. Yeah, just brutal. So, guys,
like I said, if Carolina wins, I'm staying out there. I'm not asking people to pay for but we do want more sponsors. We're opening up more avenues for sponsors coming up. And look, just go get a subscription to the site. You get so much stuff, guys. And it's a great community. I mentioned Datica earlier. Go read Datica's post. Read Rob Jones's post. Read so many of these people's posts because they know what they're talking about. Datica's coached big time stuff. So it's a really, really good community that you'll be a lot more comfortable in than in some of these communities where it's just people who don't even know how to spell the players' names.
Yeah.
You don't get that on ours.
No,
everybody, here's a guarantee. Everyone who subscribes to our site knows how to spell the Tar Heels names, and they know that Tar Heels is 2 words, not 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I got $1 for every time I saw that crap. Just make sure you block Kevin Roy on the boards, right? Just make sure you.
Yeah, we're all about trolling Kevin Roy. It's all. And by the way, if Carolina does get to the Final Four, I got to pay for Kevin's airfare to go out there. So we need subscribers.
Yeah, man.
Although, if we lose subscribers, then I could say, Kevin, I can't afford it. You can't go. It would spare me having to have him around.
Exactly. I'm just messing. We know we like to troll Kevin on here. He's been doing a fantastic job this season.
The thing is, he's got the best attitude. He's the least likely guy you think would have a great attitude about it.
Yeah,
and he has a phenomenal attitude about it.
Yeah, Kevin is fantastic at dishing it, but he can also handle it as well. So I'll give him credit for that. There's a lot of people who can't.
I want my goal on these shows is to develop a Kevin Roy cult following.
Yeah. He's almost like a mythical creature at this point because he's not on camera really. He's the guy behind the camera when it comes to taking photos and everything. He's not on podcast, so he's almost like I'm not gonna say Bigfoot, but he's similar to that where it's like we talk about him all the time, but only select few people have actually seen him. You know what I mean?
That was his nickname for John Gwaltney.
Oh, was it?
Because when John Gwaltney was on our staff, he's like, no one's ever seen you before, and you've been in there all along. Gwaltney left last year.
Maybe he's the new one.
I guess he left. Yeah, he's the new John Gwaltney, but he don't want to be called the new John Gwaltney. No. John's great. I love John. And Kevin and John are completely different people, which is why that little Bigfoot thing kind of worked. But, Kevin, I think he kind of secretly likes when we talk about him.
I think he might. I don't think he dislikes it. I think he'd let us know if he did.
He's a guy that get in there and squabble a little bit with you and come out all right.
Yeah, no.
He's the guy. He's the guy in college that you get in a fight with at 9:30 at a frat party, and at 11:30 you're drinking beers together.
Yeah, best friends.
Man, I would have probably kicked your butt. No, man, I would have kicked your butt, and you leave it at that.
That's the greatest description of Kevin I think I've ever heard, and that's a great way to wrap this show up, guys. Make sure you like it. Like the video below. If you think Carolina's going to beat Alabama, like the video below. If you're looking forward to the Sweet 16, like the video below. And if you think 9:40 is way too late for a tip-off time, even though it's not going to start till after 10, go ahead and like the video below. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another edition of the UNC Basketball Show. Share, subscribe, hit the notification bell too, because if you haven't noticed, we upload a ton this time of year. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks.